For joining us for the special meeting of the Fayetteville City Council today. We glad to have you all who are here in the audience and those who will be joining us remotely. I think we do have a couple of council members on the line. Councilmember Hondros and Benavente, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, so council, as we move to begin the agenda, we'll go with item 2.0 is the invocation. We'll go with Councilmember Thompson, if he didn't mind. And immediately following, let's stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance, if we could. You green, Councilman?
Not yet.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we graciously and humbly come before you today, Heavenly Father, asking for your guidance and your wisdom to guide us in the direction to lead your people, to keep our children safe, and to keep this city safe, Heavenly Father. So bless all those who are in attendance, bless all those who are on Zoom, and bless all those who are listening, Heavenly Father. Let the actions that we perform today be pleasing in your eyes. And we ask these things in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Thompson. So, Council, with that, we'll move to
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Hewitt, you had something?
Yes, sir. Josh is here with us for Attorney Pulliam, but I do not believe we need the closed session for attorney-client privilege.
Okay, so item 5.2 can be eliminated?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes, sir.
Okay, Mayor, Council, I move that we approve our agenda with the exception of removing 5.2, the closed session for attorney-client privilege will be removed.
All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Councilmember Thompson to approve the agenda with the exclusion of 5.2, which has now been eliminated. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, Council, I look to you for your votes. Councilmember Benavente?
Green.
Councilmember Hondros?
Green.
All right. Madam Clerk, that motion carries by those present, unanimous. All right, moving to the next item, which is item 5.1, the school resource officer discussion. Council, as you know, on June the 27th, we had a special meeting where the school board members came in and the city council voted 8-2, if I'm not mistaken, to approve in theory the memorandum of understanding with the instructions to ask the city manager to work with the school board to get more details that we'll have in consideration today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Adam, Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And good afternoon, Council. And what I'm going to do today is we're going to run through, first of all, our background. You see that's up there, and sort of how we got to this moment today. It's been a bit of a whirlwind, I know, for all of us since May 21st, which is when we received notice from the Sheriff's Office that they would no longer be providing the school resource officer nor the traffic control officers for the Cumberland County school system. That set in motion a series of discussions and meetings and communications about what ultimately is now the Cumberland County school system's request to you all that you would consider adding school resource officers and traffic control officers to our operations. And don't need to go through probably all of those dates and times. I think you're familiar with them, but if you focus on the very end, which have been added since our last meeting, you can see that there have been some communication points to you from the city manager. There's been discussion with the county themselves about the possibility of getting funding to help in some of these costs. And then just really hot off the press today, we received an updated memorandum of agreement from the school system itself that takes into consideration some of the points that have been discussed. And of course, we're going to get into that in just a moment. First are some things that the Cumberland County school system, since we last met, have responded to and suggested as part of this MOA, or Memorandum of Agreement. And the 4 points on your slides show that, again, they're talking about funding for 25 officers, their salaries and benefits. That would be an annual recurring cost to them that they would take on. In the first year of adding that officer, they would also include a $3,000 one-time cost for that officer to cover some of the cost of fitting up that officer for that position. In addition to the traffic control officers, by point number 2 is that was, again, something that the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office had been paying for, so it was not one of their direct expenses, but they knew that was of concern, and so they proposed the following, where they would pay 100% of the cost for the traffic control officers in year 1, and you can see a graduating decline in their funding contribution up to 5 years from now, when they would expect the city, excuse me, to pay for the full freight or full cost of providing that service. And bullet 3 is that they are also open to the suggestion that we would look at the changing or modifying what is in the current memorandum of agreement related to the role of the SRO. We looked at, for example, at Wake County, of what they have, and possibly doing some modeling and some modifications based on that type of an agreement. And the last point here is that they understand and would be agreeable to a ramp-up period, which will be explained from the next slide, about how we would propose, if the council is inclined to agree to this, how we would get to that 25 officer over time, given the short window that we have between now and the start of the school year on August 26th. Here is communication that is largely taken from what the city manager sent to you previously, but I want to recap it here. You can see from these points that while there is obviously value in it from a community policing standpoint, and having our city Fayetteville police officers in the schools, the same challenges that the sheriff's office was facing and why they've given for why they're pulling out of this is no less for us, and perhaps even greater for us sometimes. So there's still that challenge of finding people to do this work. You can see in point number 2 what the chief of police proposes as how we would begin to staff these positions. There's some dates and some position numbers included in those, but you can see that the intention would be that by the start of the school year, we would have 6 roving school resource officers that would be focused on 9 high schools. And of course, by January 1, then the hope was that we would have 9 additional school resource officers that would be able to provide, or assign 9, school resource officers to the 9 high schools, and then all other schools would need separate security. Again, that's what the school is moving forward with now, is having security details at schools that will not have the SROs. And then the hope is that by the beginning of next school year, we would in fact have the additional 10 SROs that would cover the middle schools, and then we would hopefully be in process to filling the elementary school roving positions that were proposed. In all instances, the city of Fayetteville is going to be responsible for 911 response to every school within our city jurisdiction. So whether there is an SRO there or not, we would be the first to respond to all calls for service. Another point that we've discussed and over this window of time is also what the cost of having those traffic control officers. That, of course, is a number that is based on some estimates, but based on the communication we've had, that would require about 66 traffic control officers to cover all of our schools. It varies by school how many you need. And that going off the rate that they have been paid is approximately $20 per hour, and using an estimate of around 4 hours per day over a 185-day school year, we believe that number to be in excess of $1 million per year to cover that expense. And of course, finding those people would again be a challenge, but in this case we think we would be able to at least pull from the existing TCOs to see if we could sort of begin where the last school year left off. The next point is, again, just understanding that the cost of an officer is more than just salary and benefits. We're going to get into some of those numbers in just a moment. But one of the questions that's come up is this a cost-neutral process or agreement with us, and you'll see the answer is no, but we will explain sort of why that is and the challenge that is for us. And of course, at the time this was written, we were still having discussion back and forth with the schools and with the council and their board about changes to the MOA. They've, of course, like I said earlier, they've submitted a revised MOA. You have that in your packet with what we'll call a red line version that shows the modifications they've made to the original MOA, and they have addressed many of the issues that we've just brought up. And of course, as the chief has said a few times, just the challenge that is, and trying to get this up and running in a very short amount of time, the grace that we're seeking to sort of work this out in an initial step and then have time to work out more details. So looking at it as a one-year agreement and how we could make some additional changes and modifications in the coming months with a little more time, a little more breathing room for us to figure those things out. So those are some points I think you've seen before, but wanted to highlight those again. Getting into some of the numbers now, as I just mentioned, I think a big question has been, is this a cost-neutral solution for us? And I want to explain what you're looking at here. At the very top left, you're going to see what it costs to provide a vehicle and basically one-time cost when we hire an officer. And that number comes to just around $61,000 when you include what it takes to purchase that vehicle, outfit it with all the necessary equipment, and then providing a computer for an officer. So that's a huge expense, obviously not considered in the school system's proposal of covering. Like I said, their proposal gives us a one-time $3,000 cost for an officer. In addition to that, we know, for example, that there are just recurring costs of providing anyone on staff, right? So there's going to be uniform, supplies, training costs that go along with that. And off to the right, just given time and the challenge of sort of pulling this together, there's many other unaccounted for in this chart costs that we know would be there for an officer, such as the fuel for that vehicle, the preventive maintenance for a vehicle repairs. Then there's software licenses, the body-worn cameras, the weapons, phones, and services, and the indirect costs are not accounted for, and then, of course, membership and dues. So don't have numbers on those, but just know the numbers we're providing don't have those, so that what you're seeing is probably lower than what is the actual full cost of any position in the police department, and for that matter, any individual in our service in the city has extra costs like these. But we wanted at the same time to provide some sense of what this might be. So from, again, the top left, it shows you that $61,000 number. What we tried to do is show over time, so over a 5-year period, if we take that 61,000 divided by 5, that's where that 12,218 number comes from, trying to just spread it out, knowing, there's no sort of perfect world here where all officers are hired at the same time at the beginning of the year. So this is a reflection then of what these costs would be within a window of time. At some point, you are going to have to buy that vehicle. You are going to have to do these costs. We feel it's our responsibility for you at least to know and be aware of those costs coming. From a policy perspective, there are other reasons to make decisions. Cities are not businesses. We don't break even. We don't make money on any service we do. And so this would not be different in that respect. But we do feel it's our responsibility to at least show you that. So what this chart below shows you is what the costs on an annualized basis. Again, if we amortize some of those costs out over 5 years, you can see on the right side of that column what that cost to the city might be reflective to that it's not covered in the MOA with the Cumberland County school system. So again, just trying to answer the question, is this a cost neutral or not? And this shows that, at least from adding positions, it's not.
Can we ask questions now, Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Adam, go to Councilmember Hare.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Adam, thank you for everything that you all our team is trying to do. At our last meeting, when we had the members of the school board here, I think the chair and the vice chair was here, and a few other folk were here. And one of my questions during that meeting, might have been the last question of the meeting, I wanted to make sure that all of the costs, whatever the names are given to the cost, if that was going to be taken care of by the school board or whomever, okay? Now, I am very much in support of us supporting this item. Very much in favor of what can we do to help protect and keep our kids safe and what all the other things that our resource officers do. Now, you stated, and at the end of that meeting, that I thought that my answer, Mr. City Manager, was yes, that the school board, I think they responded, would fall back on making sure that all of the costs, whatever the cost is, uniforms, upfitting of the computer system for the cars, whatever they are, that they were going to do that. And I thought my answer for that question was yes.
Mine too.
Now, today I'm hearing that they are willing or able to do a one-time cost of $3,000.
Yes, sir.
After that, it's going to have to be done wherever the funding comes from, supposedly the city of Fayetteville. So this is one of my questions also. What was being done all the years that the sheriff's department was fulfilling this positions across the county? Who and where was the funding coming from on these particular items every year? Now, when I first came on council, of course, the city of Fayetteville were doing resource officers. So now that we're here for the majority of the time, now that I've been on council, it has been the sheriff's department. So those two questions, what happened to that yes, last week, 2 weeks ago, and then what happened when the county was fulfilling these positions? Was the county taking care of all of the costs or wherever the funding was coming from, either the county, the county commissioners board, or the Board of Education board, please?
Thank you, Councilman O'Hare.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
At the last meeting, there must have been then a misunderstanding because at that time the school board was not offering to pay for the TCOs at all. And in the chart that we provided, we estimated the cost of all of the services right at $4.9 million. When the police chief and the team looked at how many SROs that they felt were needed at the schools, how many spares they would need, what level of management they would need, so far as a supervisor, a lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and an OA2, we came up with a staffing total that was, again, I think memory serves, about $4.9 million. The school system, in their proposal, has only offered to pay for, I think it's 24 SROs, Adam, and 1 sergeant or lieutenant?
23 and 2.
23 and 2 sergeants. There's no OA2 in there at all. And so when Adam goes to his next charts and we look at the traffic control officers, some 66 positions, there is no one on staff. Someone has to make sure that every day, Monday through Friday during the school season, that if someone's unavailable, somebody else can be in their place. So we are, even in what we're presenting to you today, it is a scaled-back version of what the chief said was needed. And again, the chief's here, and Mayor, unless you have a problem, I'd ask the chief, since we have a space, because he may have questions. Chief, if you want to come on up and sit here at the end of the table with us so you don't have to, and if I misspeak on anything, as always, please correct me. And so even when we met with the school board, it was not revenue neutral. And as I always say, that's okay. As Adam said, and as the chief mentioned, that's okay.
Say what that means to the public that's listening.
Revenue neutral means is that if you accept this proposal, even the revised proposal from the school system, their proposal is that they're going to pay for 25 SROs, the salary and benefits, and $3,000 of one-time upfront cost. What Adam shows on the screen in front of you is that does not cover our other costs that we have, such as cars, such as training, ongoing equipment, doesn't amortize the vehicles and things over time. And so, again, even on a low-end number, we're envisioning that over a 5-year period could be a cost to the city of about $1.6 million that we would have to eat. And again, that's okay, because as Adam said, we're in the business of providing service and we don't necessarily sell widgets. To your other question, who paid for that when it was provided by the sheriff's office? That was provided, those funds all came in one way or the other from the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners, except for the SRO salaries, which the school board, I guess, gets from Raleigh and then sends to the school system, and the school system then pays and reimburses the Cumberland County system, as Jay Tolan mentioned that they do in the past.
Okay, now stop right there if I just could on that particular question. So if that is the case, could you tell me, has that been a part of the conversation with the county to continue to fulfill this vacancy?
The difference,
financial
yes,
vacancy?
I had a conversation this week on the weeks, it feels like we've been talking about this forever, but it's only been 2.5 weeks, with County Manager Greer, and asked him if there was any funding options or available for the county to help fill in the gap, and he's told me no at this time. The school board yesterday at their meeting.
Always no.
At their meeting yesterday, but again, that was just low-level manager to manager, and I appreciated his call and always his candor. Yesterday, the school board, as reported in the newspaper, they have also directed their staff to ask the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners for funding, I assume for TCOs to help smooth out the gap as well. And I'm not sure if that request has been made formally to the Cumberland County schools as yet, to the county commissioners and the county manager as yet. But that is, what was reported in the newspaper, that the school board had asked the staff of the school to ask the county.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So many more questions, but thank you, Mayor.
All right, before I go to Councilmember Thompson, I just kind of want to recap a couple of things that you asked to make sure that we understand it. One, the county commissioners fund the sheriff's office and the school board. That is under their portfolio of offices, just like social service and some of the other things that they're required to do. So I think the difference is, even though these services may have been part of those individual organizations' budget, like the sheriff's office and the school board, that is why the county funded it, because they fund their other operations. This was just one of those things. So if this process moves over to the city, to them, they're not funding another arm of the county government. This is now a city initiative, right? And so I think we've got to make sure that we understand that that's where the source was coming from. They're mandated to take care of certain things, including sheriff funding and schools in this particular case. The other thing is, and I'll go to Councilmember Thompson after this, I'm reading page 9 of the memorandum, and the CFO Tolan here said clearly that we will reimburse any invoices that are submitted by the city, okay? And he re-emphasizes that. It says the board will appropriate and remit to the city personnel costs as described in Schedule 1 and 2. Remittance will be made based on quarterly invoice submission to the board. Invoices shall reflect actual staffing levels during the period, okay? They did not have all of these breakdowns and details, which I do have some questions about some of this, Adam, because I want to know, if we buy a radio, do we turn it off at 3 o'clock? Or is it expense to someone else? How do we do it now? Because once you buy a radio, you need a radio. Once you buy a car, you need a car. You know, and so some of those questions I have, but just reflect back to the MOU.
And Mr. Mayor, if you look at Schedule 1, he goes on to say that is actual salary and benefits.
Right.
And that's what it is. It does not include the car. It does not include the radio. But your point is absolutely correct. We, with the positions that we put on pause in the police department to balance the budget and the reality that we weren't able to hire so many officers, we do have cars available. We do. We do have radios available to be able to use for these SROs if council moves forward with this in the upcoming time. What is on the chart that Adam was showing, and I know he said it was, this is contemplated not to be a 1 year or 2 year agreement. If you get into the business, it's like the sheriff, it's 20 years. And so in 10 years from now or 5 years from now, when we're here and we're looking at the budget, and y'all are looking at me, and I'm looking at you, and you're looking at me, and I'm looking at you, and you want to ask me why it's going to be $1.6 million, I need to reflect back to say, well, council, we shared that with you. This is not, because, and I want to say this again for the record. The chief finds value in this, I find value in this, and the staff finds value in this. The question is, this is not revenue neutral to the city. And that is okay. That is council's choice. We're happy to explore any of the numbers with you, but the school board is not reimbursing us based upon the agreements we have and what we've been able to glean from our conversations with them for some of those costs which are listed there. That's one part. That's one part. The larger part that I think, because we could smooth this out. We could smooth this out if council chose. The larger issue is on the TCOs, where after 5 years, and the revised agreement that came this morning at 11:13 a.m. that added Schedule 2 clearly says that those 66 officers, traffic control officers, are our responsibility, and our responsibility starting on day one. This is not a desire issue. This is an easy contract. We need people, and we need time to put people in place. And we need council support for the funding. The question before council is, not being revenue neutral, is the $1.6 million that we're showing here for SROs, and then the and the next slide, please, right here, the $4.9 million over 5 years on the next slide, that the city would be assuming under the agreement that was sent to y'all this morning at 11:13 a.m. As long as all hearts and minds are clear, we're good.
All right, thank you. Councilman Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Doug, I just want to reflect on some of the things that you said a few minutes ago. Because I came here today only looking at a one-year contract. And the reason I say that is we are here, I don't even know how many days prior to August 25th, where we need to ensure that our kids are safe. 45 days, whatever the case may be. One thing I don't want to do is for this council to make a decision for another council 5 years from now, because we don't know who's going to be on council. I understand it's not revenue neutral. And after 5 years, if it's $4 million, if this year's only costs us $200,000, then I'm okay with that. But what I don't want us to do is come August 25th, 2025, not 2026, which the slide says, is that we have SROs and that we have TCOs on point, at as many schools as possible. Now, you talked about the funding that the Cumberland County Schools was going to fund 100% of for this school year. And Adam, you said it would be 23 and 2. So my question is, how many can we hire within that 1 year to need all that funding? What if we can only hire 10 or 12? Right. What happens to that other funding? Well, now, I want to separate SROs from TCOs, because TCOs, like you said, is a totally different conversation. So let's focus on one thing if we can, and that's for the SROs, and move over to TCOs, even if it comes where we need to have two separate MOUs. Right. So let's make sure that we get our priorities straight first. And I would refer the chief to answer that question on how many we can fund between now and the next time for us to renew.
And Mr. Mayor, I want the chief to ask about how many he can hire.
Right.
The question about the funding is, as the mayor said, they reimburse us on a quarterly basis.
Right.
So if we only hire 9, they reimburse us for 9.
Gotcha.
So if we hire 24, then they reimburse us for 24. So with that said, then Chief, how many do you believe that you'd be able to put in place?
That is, but what happens to that additional funding that they're willing to give us?
It sits. They don't pay us if we don't staff.
Got you.
They've appropriated.
Got you.
Whatever
Got you.
amount.
Got you. Whether it was 5.3 million, whatever the case may be, they
Yes,
got
sir.
it. All right.
So as we took a look at potentially implementation of an SRO program, I couldn't wait. I have to have contingency plans in place. So we sat down with my command staff and we've had discussions. Come next week, if something is voted on today or something is approved today, what are our next steps? When we presented about a week ago, I said 6 immediately to start going out, doing some of the surveys at the schools so we're prepared for August 25th, the first day of classes. I think that's a reasonable expectation for me to have for me and my staff to be prepared for the first day of school. Again, I set my bar on what I think I could achieve, not knowing what potential lateral hires we may have come in over the next couple months based on the new budget, the new step plan, things of that nature. I think that we haven't set too aggressive of goals for ourselves. We've set goals that we could reasonably obtain, and having a contingent of 9 to cover high schools or my most at-risk schools become January, and then follow on for a good recruiting session over the first part of 2025 leading into the start of school year next year. I believe we set ourselves reasonable and attainable goals as it pertains to a slow rollout of an SRO program. TCOs, and I know that was brought up, if that's the case, August 25th, I would need to start hiring processes post-haste to ensure that we have those personnel in place to ensure that our kids are safely crossing streets on August 25th. So, I think I agree with you. There's 2 issues that we're dealing with today. The SROs, I've gone over it several times, me, my staff, the interest that exists within our department of people becoming SROs if we do implement that program, the potential interest of people coming to the Fayetteville Police Department if they choose to remain as an SRO, whether it's Cumberland County, Hope County, Bladen County, whatever county they choose to come from based on their interest in being part of our program. I think that we have a good plan that's not overly zealous in what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you, Chief. Doug, one follow-up question. If we cannot meet that goal of 23-2, could we use some of that money allocated from the CCS for the guns, for the gas, for the vehicle, for the computers, for the training?
As the agreement is written, I would probably say no, but that could be something that we can discuss with them. But as the mayor said, and the mayor's correct on this, that is the cost of doing business when we hire a police officer. We get them a car, we get them a gun, we get them a computer. That's, again, the part that makes this not revenue neutral. We do have cars that they wouldn't have the newest car. We wouldn't envision that they would be on patrol, or if they were, they would be low miles. But it would still be, again, a cost, as we talked about over time, that we would have to look at.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Go to Councilmember Benavente and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Colvin. I can't see the room, so I'm just going to assume that Adam is up front manning the PowerPoint. Can you go back to the timeline? I think it was part of the first slide. So I guess I just wanted to make sure there was some clarity because I heard it said, and I feel like I've seen it written in some articles on June 27th. All we have done up until this point is to get our staff to work with Cumberland County school staff to work towards an agreement. We've not agreed to anything yet, have we?
No.
I'm sorry. I'm waiting for. I don't know if Adam responded just yet.
No, the answer is no. They have sent over an MOA and would like council to consider approval of it.
Okay. And then City Manager Hewitt, is it on this timeline? Well, okay, I see it now. The county manager said that no, they are not going to participate. The county commissioners are not going to participate in this process.
Yes, sir. He said, and again, I want to preface it by saying this was staff to staff, and he said at this time.
So you also mentioned that the school board is going to ask the individual principals to approach the school, to approach county commissioners. Could you say more about that?
No, sir. It was reported in an article. I don't know if it was CityView today. We may need to swear you in just a moment. But the school board asked the associate superintendent and superintendent to reach out to the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners about funding options as well to support this transition. I assume ad-libbing that in. That's
okay. So there is no effort right now by the school board or superintendents or anybody to talk with the Cumberland County Commissioners at this point either.
I believe that was the direction they gave to staff, was to reach out and ask about that funding. But I don't know if it was to schedule a meeting with the school board and the commissioners, but from, again, reports that were in cityviewtoday.com, that was the ask of staff.
What would we need to do as a Fayetteville City Council to engage not staff to staff, but elected to elected with the Cumberland County Commissioners regarding this topic? What would you need from us for you to get that done?
I guess it would have to be, if the council chose to, if there was a consensus to make an ask formally, but I'm not sure that that's anything that has been given in consideration, being that those were county departments, so.
Well, right, but I think that Councilmember Hare asked a really relevant question about who, up until 20 years ago, 30 years ago, up until today, has been paying for all this. Where is that money going to go now? We tax our citizens for very specific services. The county taxes the citizens of Cumberland County to include Fayetteville for very specific reasons. Where's that money going, since we're going to now have to start diverting what should be our responsibilities towards county responsibilities? How are we doing that without having at least an effort to discuss this with our county commissioners? So that's why I wanted to understand if there's potential for us to start that conversation, since we're under such a time crunch. But I think Mayor Colvin or City Manager Hewitt already answered my question on how we can do that. The other question I have is that I sent in an email asking for Chief Braden to get back to us once the school board gets back to him about meaningful call data, where we can get some kind of an idea of what the actual need is at our schools, where disciplinary issues end up arising to the point where a uniformed officer or an armed officer became necessary. Have we gotten any data back about that yet?
So the packet that was provided, I believe, last week, it had the calls for service for each individual schools that dictated, I think, 3 years of calls for service. Unfortunately, most of these calls for service, whether an arrest or an investigation is done, involve juveniles, and there's not much further information I can provide about individual calls for service.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to understand, Chief Braden, is that day on June 27th, you're right, you did give us a packet, but you made a comment specifically saying that you had not been able to review meaningful call data, and that was something that you were still waiting on additional details from Cumberland County Schools for. So are you saying that you have not gotten anything more since June 27th in that packet?
So outside of what those calls were, don't have access to specific juvenile records as they pertain to calls for service.
Well, I guess I think we're missing each other's point here. Last time you presented to us on the 27th, you made a very specific comment about the limitations of the data you currently have, and you very specifically used the term that you have not received meaningful call data to be able to come to any conclusions about what the need is at the schools. And my question to you then, and the response from city manager, maybe this is a city manager question, was that we would approach the Cumberland County school system about getting that data. My simple question is a yes or no. Have you gotten any more data about this topic since June 27th?
No.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's relevant. We say that we're a city that is data driven in our decisions about public safety, and we identified a gap in our understanding of this, and we've yet to receive that information. I did send to my city council members some information about Cumberland County schools and the way that, discipline and suspensions and expulsions are very racially disparate. And I think that can speak to some other concerns that we should have. But if we're not making a decision based on data as it relates to public safety, that's a claim that we got to be careful making moving forward. I've got two more questions, Mayor Colvin, and I'll pass it on.
We've got other council members who are waiting to speak, so if you can, then I'll.
These are the last two questions here. Can you clarify, City Manager Hewitt, that on page 9, it's not that we can turn in any receipt and that the school board is going to make us whole, but in fact, it's very narrow what they'll reimburse us for. Could you say more about that?
Yes, sir. If you are saying section 7, that says payment, the board will appropriate and remit to the city personnel to the city personnel costs as described in Schedules 1 and 2. And then when you actually, invoices shall reflect actual staffing levels during the subject period, which also speaks to Councilmember Thompson's question. And then you refer over to Schedules 1 and 2, and it describes salary and benefits. And salary and
All right.
benefits does not include the ancillary costs that were shown on the earlier slide.
Right, and I think Adam said that there are many costs that we cannot calculate. There's indirect costs that we don't have numbers on. Is there even a plausible range of what that could be? Is there a window that is definitely not more than $5 million at the end of the day? Can we give any sort of a picture of what that indirect and that many unincluded costs are?
For the SROs, yes, sir. It's on the screen now, if you can see that. But I also want to just very briefly, Mayor, jump back to the point that I said about of finding value in this. The schools' traditional calendar, I think, is 185 school days. The officers who would work as SROs under this agreement, any other agreement, would largely be on traditional 8-hour shifts or maybe 10-hour shifts. When school is not in session, we would still have access to those officers. And so that has a benefit to potentially to the city, which again is what I said, there's value for it. And that could eat into that cost that the city would pay. But again, this is still not revenue neutral. And
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms, because I don't know if you want someone who's be an SRO to then be in a situation where they're dealing with someone in a mental health crisis, or vice versa. You've got somebody who's used to
Councilman, we've got to bring it in. We've got to, in fairness to the people behind you.
If that's real, I got no. But I mean, the city manager is making it seem like it's, you know, we can double dip and have them doing 10 different things. I think actually a huge problem that we're not discussing this. Who exactly are we putting in these schools? Is it the same one that are prosecuting these kids when they're outside of school classroom and to get more evidence on them? This is a problem that we can't make a decision today about it.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember. And we had some bad reception toward the end, so when you come back, if you are looking to speak again, maybe see if you can try to correct that. Go to Mayor Pro Tem Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few questions on a lot of this. First off, is I was reading today that Spring Lake has told the sheriff's department or the county that they just can't do that. Is this correct?
That is correct.
And what was said to them? How are they handling this?
My understanding from Spring Lake, and again, I've not talked to the school system about this directly, is that they were not going to provide officers and that the school system was going to have to figure out how to do it. But that's the extent of what I know from Spring Lake.
Okay. Then my next thing is, just for the record, I do agree that we do need SROs and we need to take care of our children and we need to make sure that we can do the best job that we can in the time that we have and to get people. I agree with Councilmember Thompson that the SROs and the TCOs are two different MOUs in my mind. Where I am concerned is, my understanding is that the county took $2.4 million from the sheriff's budget and put it into they took it out and put it into their budget because that's what they used to give the sheriff for the schools. Is that correct?
I think that's what's been reported. That's the best I can say.
Yeah, so basically what happened is it was included in the sheriff's budget for that particular item, and when he no longer chose to provide the services, the money that was allocated for it was taken back.
Okay, so two things. Not every school, so there are schools that have city residents, city children going to county schools. because this is not revenue neutral, we do know that I know of 2 high schools that are going to have sheriffs in them, that the majority of the children in there are city residents. I do know that. So what I'm having my issue with is the $2.4 million that the county was giving to the sheriff's office to take care of all the schools is no longer available for RTCOs. Is that correct?
So according to Chief Braden, the statute says that if these are going to be traffic control officers, they have to work either under the sheriff's department or the police department of its jurisdiction, correct?
Correct. That's what gives them the authority to be cited for any violations or failure to comply with the directions of that traffic control officer.
So where I'm having the issue is, and my understanding is, I understand that the county was giving it to the sheriff's department, but every school is under the sheriff, whether it's in Fayetteville, Hope Mills, or Spring Lake. So I'm having a hard time understanding why that 2.4 will not help with TCOs.
So what Mayor Pro Tem, if I understand what your point is, you're saying that those schools that are in the county outside of the city limits of Fayetteville, you're saying should still be provided and covered by the sheriff, which I think they are, right? So the unincorporated areas, anything outside of our jurisdiction?
But we are in the jurisdiction of the county, and I'm talking about the TCOs. I'm talking about the TCOs here, because it might cost us, they're saying we'll give you 100% the first year, 75% the second year, 50% the third year, and the fourth year we're only going to give you 25%. The city of Fayetteville taxpayers are going to have to pay that 75% for the TCOs.
That are just in the city, though. The ones that are just in the city.
Exactly. But my tax bill reads that I pay county taxes and I live in the county, and then I pay my city tax. So I don't understand how the schools are underneath the county, but they're not going to give us TCOs. I've accepted the fact that the SROs, but the TCOs, I don't understand how you can give us the job and then not help us, but we are in your district. Every one of us pays taxes to the county.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
I don't know if anybody agrees with me or disagrees with me.
Well, I guess, we're taking into consideration, I guess we understand your position, and I guess if there are some comments directly to that, we may address that. But if I wanted to give Councilmember Hondros, and then we had another round from Councilmember Thompson and myself.
Before I'm done, I'm in agreement to splitting them, because we have got the biggest task, and they're not coming to the table to help us help our children. They're just giving it to us and saying, take it and go. You're on your own. I'm out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Hondros, and then Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I apologize for not being able to make it in person. It's been a week, but I want to echo a lot of what our colleagues have said. Dr. Hare mentioned funding for TCOs and additional funding for SROs that won't necessarily be covered. And again, I agree. Number one, I think public schools, in this case, Cumberland County schools, are better with SROs in them, whether it's Cumberland County Sheriff's Office, whether it's Fayetteville Police Department. I think they do enhance the school. So let me just say that first. But And then the additional funding that we're not going to get, that's not covered by the state through Cumberland County Schools through the agreement for SROs and the TCOs, it's already been said that that's not covered. And we've already said, it's already been mentioned that not everything we do is revenue neutral. So we provide services in stormwater, we provide services in solid waste, and we may try to mitigate some of those costs by enterprise funds or different instruments, different tools, so that it doesn't negatively impact, or to try to mitigate the impact on our general fund. But, it's tough once our budget has been completed and now we're talking about something that could be to the tune of $1.5 million. We had a consensus, I think it was unanimous, we passed the budget with a 4-cent ad valorem tax rate increase. To do all this, we could have simply passed a 5-cent ad valorem tax increase and had the $1.5 million. So while money isn't everything, the safety, I think we would all agree, is trumps money. But at the same time, we have to be able to identify when we're providing a service or we're buying a product or we have expenses. We have to know how we're gonna pay for those things. Mayor, you noted, it's Cumberland County Schools under their purview and their portfolio, or Cumberland County as a whole, under their purview is Cumberland County Schools. They have other things. They have Department of Social Services, they have homelessness, and they have the Sheriff's Office. So these are all, whether we want to say they are problems or challenges or responsibilities, SROs and TCOs primarily are the responsibility of Cumberland County Schools, and by extension, the Sheriff's Department and the County Department. Up until we sign an agreement, the city's not responsible. It's not that it's not our problem. It is our community, but it's not under our purview. Once we sign that agreement, then we are responsible. So the sheriff, at the beginning of this, and I'm not sure this is an exact quote, but he said something to the effect of, I cannot in good conscience sign an agreement that I can't deliver on or that I can't fulfill. So my question, number one, I also agree with Councilman Thompson. I think Mayor Pro Tem echoed that number one, it should be a 1-year agreement, maybe even a 6-month agreement to 1 year. It should be a short-term agreement. And I think we need to look at this in 2 separate phases, SROs as one item and then TCOs separately. But my question would be for Chief Braden or the manager Hewitt, can we fulfill this contract? If we sign this memorandum of agreement, because if we look at, I don't know if anybody's had an opportunity to look at it, but on Schedule 2 with the TCOs specifically, you're talking about, if my quick math is correct, 66 TCOs. Can we fill those positions? If not, why are we even talking about it? If we can't fulfill the agreement, why would we sign an agreement that we're going to be in breach of? And then I think it's been mentioned by a couple of my colleagues. So all of our districts don't line up. The city council districts are one district. The county commissioner districts, voting districts are different. State house reps, state senate. So our school districts don't line up perfectly with our districts. But so in District 9, we're centrally located. So most of our kids go to schools that are in the incorporated city limits. But you have, I know for a fact, in District 1, you got a lot of kids that are going to a school that doesn't reside in the incorporated city limits. So they'll be going to a Cumberland County school that's serviced by Cumberland County sheriffs, but they're city of Fayetteville tax-paying residents. And I think the same thing goes for District 6. And I haven't looked at the map. I haven't studied the map, but it may be District 2 as well. So you have citizens that are paying ad valorem taxes to the city, ad valorem taxes to the county. The school district they're in resides outside the incorporated city limits. So while we're using city of Fayetteville tax-paying resident public tax dollars to fund these programs only in schools, Cumberland County schools that reside in the city limits of Fayetteville, but I could live on the outskirts of town where I'm barely in town, but my child goes to a school that's outside, so he or she's getting a lesser service, but I'm paying the same taxes as everybody else. So we got to look at the equity of that. And I just want to make one final, Councilmember McNair, I don't know if she's there in person or online, but she sent an email yesterday, which I think is a prudent one, asking for a meeting with our county partners. We can set up a meeting with the school board, with the county board of commissioners and the sheriff's office, and whoever comes, and whoever doesn't, there'll just be an empty seat there. I mean, the community's starting to notice. When we did the community safety summit, there was a couple empty chairs from county folks. So that's on them. All we can do is extend the invitation. If they decide to come or not, that's their choice. And I'll close with this, Mr. Mayor. I just want us to realize, and Chief and Manager, you all correct me if I'm wrong, if we stand up this division, I'm guessing a division within our Fayetteville Police Department, we're going to have a division that's larger than the Hope Mills Police Department. So this isn't a small venture. So in haste, mistakes are made. I'm not saying we shouldn't do this. I'm saying we absolutely should work with Cumberland County Schools and try to forge a path forward to get this done. I don't understand the haste while we're trying to get it done today. Something like this, I think, needs to be looked at because there's a lot of police departments around the state of North Carolina that aren't as big as this division we're talking about setting up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Hondros. Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question, and I think the rest are statements. I guess it's for you, City Manager. What is the alternative if we don't take on this initiative?
I know that in conversations with the school system staff, they are, and again from the reporting that was in the news, they are reviewing, I think, 6 proposals to provide unarmed security at the schools. And that would be the option, or it may be that the sheriff's office would seek to fill the gap.
Okay, I was going to say you could start right there. As a parent who have students within the school system, I think I'll feel more safer knowing that we have trained SROs in our school systems. No offense to other officers, but I think I feel more safe with our staff. And then, Chief, how comfortable are you? Because this is something that you support. Is that correct?
So yes, I think to add to what the manager just stated, even if we choose to not do this, the Fayetteville Police Department is getting called at the next fight at any school. Whether there's a private security officer there or not, we're still going to take the report, we're still going to have to handle that action, regardless whether they hire private security or not. I think the support that I put behind this program is based on the fact that I would rather be proactive in doing something within the schools than purely responsive to whenever a critical incident occurs.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to just make sure that that was clear. I do support this initiative. Again, it's unfortunate that it fell on the city, but we have to do something. If we don't do it, who else is going to take on that responsibility? City Manager, are we able to provide these services financially?
Financially, but we do not have the staff to honor this agreement, and that's what the chief mentioned. Chief, could you reiterate that briefly about how many officers you believe you'd be able to put in place by January 1st of 2025?
So that would be a total of, what I'm committed to working towards is a total of 9 to support the high schools within our city or the most critical schools within our city. And I say that, I think that's...
And then how many would you be able to provide before August of next school year?
My goal for the beginning of 2025 school year would be to have staffing at all high schools and all middle schools, which would be a total of 19, and whatever I can work towards the additional rovers.
And Chief, if you could remember the point you were getting ready to make, because I think it speaks to your point and the one that Councilmember Hondros asked as well. Given that what is on the screen under 2, right now it says of August 26th of 2024, it should say versus 2026. Staff.
Thompson said that.
Coming in?
Thompson pointed that out.
We would have 6 roving SROs, we hope, when the beginning of the school system. The chief may have made that lower when he spoke a moment ago. But have 9 in place before January 1st of 2025. so many by August of 2025 as well for the other high schools. But clearly listed there is that if we enter into this agreement, we have to do it, as you said, in partnership with the schools, because we do not have the SROs for the middle schools or for the elementary schools at present. And so we would be looking at a hybrid formula. And the recommendation that, that I have, if council is inclined to move forward, and is contemplated somewhat in this agreement that's in front of you, as well as what the staff and the board, school board mentioned to you when they were here. They understand the staffing challenges we would have. But I would want us to take this interim, this 1 year period, to perfect this agreement, refine the agreement, if council is so inclined, and to work out all of these issues, but to have something, even if it's limited, if that's the council's wish, in place by August of this year. Because I think the mayor said it, maybe on media as well, on radio this morning. What happens on October 1st of this year if something were to happen? We can't provide all of the staff, but if the chief says he can provide 6 or he can provide 9.
Better than none.
But again, the concerns that I've heard from the council members, if y'all were so inclined, would allow us this next 12 months, hopefully less than that, to refine the agreement. The agreement in front of you does say it's a year-to-year agreement with an initial term from July 1st, which we already passed, 2024 through June 30th of 2025. Depending again on the direction of council, whatever questions and things that you have, if y'all were inclined to move this forward in some way, council is. My recommendation again is that we pare it back and say, this is what we can provide. Anything else beyond that that is needed, school board, you need to step in and work with us to try to provide the gap. 66 TCOs by August 25th, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. What we're going to end up with is, if we move forward on that agreement at all, we're going to have police officers. We probably have the fire department out there working under the direction of the police chief for a term period. We might even have a couple of inspectors working out there, council members. Mr. Hare's ready. I know he's ready. We will. So, but as I said all along, there's so much of this that we don't know, given the fact that it was 2 weeks ago that you were in this room. That's the first time that y'all looked at this, was 2 weeks ago, the 27th. And so the only thing that we're asking for y'all to do is to tell us, again, this is not revenue neutral. That's not a concern for staff. We just need the policy direction from council to tell us what to work on toward to respond back to the school system.
And city manager, just the conversation we just had, so we know what the alternative is. We know that we're able to possibly do this financially. We do have a shortage, but I feel like it's better than nothing. My priority is the safety of our children. If our chief of police support this, I'm going to back him 100% on this. And I do want to thank you, Chief, and our officers for even stepping up and even considering this initiative, because this was a last-minute thing. So if there's not any other questions, I'll be...
Did have a little bit more discussion.
Okay, well, after that, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, ma'am. I'll come right back to you.
I know we're on time.
So, yeah, well, thank you, Council. All interesting, great comments. And I do, speaking to the manager's point about the refinement of the agreement over this calendar year, you know, this can be like an initial, an agreement to make sure that we're in place when the children return, and they work with the school board if council gives direction, work with the school leadership, not the board, but the staff members, to refine an agreement that the council and the school can both agree on. I just want to make a couple of points to remind us as we talk about this. You know, I've heard it a couple of times that the sheriff did it, and then they stopped doing it. They've been doing it for 20 years, and how should they just save that money? But again, to Councilmember Harris' point, he remembers a time, as do I, when I was in school, that the city did it. And so instead of looking at it as if if the county has stopped doing something, let's look at it that they took care of our kids and our constituents for 20 years, and now this happens to fall on us. It's not a situation we created or asked for, but at the end of the day, we are both collect taxes to provide services to our residents and to our constituents and citizens. Two is, this is the 5th largest school district in the state. You know, 50,000 children 2/3 of those live in the city. What message do we send to anybody that we're trying to do our job to attract people to come here who look at the schools first? That we're going to give unprotected, unarmed security in this environment, in this day and time, in the city of Fayetteville. Is that a community that I want to raise my family? I mean, and as we look at that, we have to look at it, the broader picture of that. It's not about whose job it is. I think at the end of the day, this is about the service that we provide, that we agree to do. Because at the end of the day, it's tax dollars, whether it comes from the county, it's coming from us, come from the school board. It's all funded by the same taxpayer. They should not be caught in the middle of a, this is not my job or that job. And so I thank you for some of the discussion. Do have to go
Mayor
to round
Colvin, I have
two.
my hand up as
Yeah,
well.
I've got you, sir, after Councilmember Thompson.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilmember
Mayor.
Thompson.
But I believe that the mayor and the acting mayor pro tem said enough, and I totally concur. So I will leave way to the next person that has something to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Benavente, and then here.
Thank you, Mayor Colvin. The comment you just made, it doesn't matter whose job it is a wild one. You know, my entire experience on council has been very much about county responsibility per statute versus what we can't do as a city because it's not our role. But if that's the trajectory that we're moving towards, where we're blurring or removing the lines between city responsibilities, county responsibilities, you know, I just hope that holds fast for topics outside of, you know, police. I think this is a good time as any to make sure that the public knows the fear tactics that, you know, something is going to happen the day after school starts if we don't have cops in the classrooms is exactly that, a fear tactic. We've been sent actual data where it's not based on fear and emotions, but real numbers that have been crunched by experts at the North Carolina ACLU and the Southern Coalition for Social Justice that, in opinion, are what the voters expect of us, not to make decisions based on emotion, but to look at the data, to review the data. And when you look at the data that we've been sent, it says plainly, research shows that the presence of school resource officers does not produce safer school environments. It actually results in disproportionate policing of students of color and students with disabilities and worsens the school to prison pipe. Specifically, school staff refer black girls to law enforcement at a rate 3 times, triple the rate of white girls. School staff refer black boys to law enforcement at a rate 2.5 times that of white boys. And we're talking about North Carolina schools. Now, we have an opportunity here to really delve into Cumberland County schools because it looks like we're on a one-way sort of inevitable trajectory to where the city of Fayetteville is now going to be involved in school safety in Cumberland County schools. And supposedly we've learned the lesson when we decided to fund over $4 million into an Office of Community Safety that we are not a city who believes that a one-size-fits-all, one-dimensional strategy of only police works. We know that there needs to be, coupled with this type of safety apparatus, school social workers, school nurses, more programs that prevent students from having to interact with law enforcement at all. But this is the time for us to discuss that. We know that there are problems with the school to prison pipeline here in Cumberland County schools. We can't ignore that. And once we put our officers in there, we are now involved. And we own those statistics just as much as the Cumberland County schools does. So what are we going to do about them? This is the time to also not just ask the county for TCO money, but to tell the school board they need to invest in things that prevent the fights, that prevent others from coming onto campus in a way that we are also involved in that discussion. I'm sorry, Mayor Colvin, I think your mic might be hot. Just to wrap this up, y'all, we've gotten a lot of data, and I'm looking forward to members of the community, people who have their children in schools, you know, members of PTAs, being a part of this conversation as opposed to us imposing what we're going to do and them having to deal with it after the fact. Yeah. The idea that we have to have these high pressure sales tactics sign on the dotted line today before we get all the information that we're asking for, before we have all the partners in the room, is truly a scare tactic that is begging us to ignore the data. And again, we're going to lose the claim that we're a data-driven city council. We're going to lose the claim that there is delineation between the governmental bodies in this area. And all of these unprecedented changes are something that I don't believe this council has fully thought about. What
Council
we're
member,
actually
you're
signing
starting
up
to
for.
repeat the same point, so we need to bring it in so we got two other
Well,
speakers.
I'm waiting for you guys to comprehend.
We didn't make that out. All right, Councilmember Hare.
I'm repeating until it gets comprehended, sir. It's got to get comprehended.
All right. Well, you have to preach on Sunday. Right now, we've got some other speakers that are in line. Councilman Hare.
No, Mayor, I was going to request to make the motion before.
Well, I think Councilmember Banks.
Right. So that's what I was.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Thompson, you had your light pushed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I didn't see Councilmember Green. Let me get her since
Yes,
she
sir.
hadn't had her.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like my first round. I've listened to everything. I've read everything we've all read. I've heard everything we've all heard. I sent an email in response to Councilwoman McNair's request to meet with the sheriff for things we've already said today. I definitely believe that the sheriff is where he's at because of the things that were given or not given to him. I can be on board with some type of motion that we do this on a one-year basis based on the chief's recommendations and what he knows he can fulfill. Because if we don't look at the exact things that we know we can fulfill, we would be no better than the sheriff taking the contract and signing a contract that we cannot fulfill. That's the worst thing you can ever do in business. It's the worst thing we can do as a city. I don't want to commit to anything further than that because I think we need a trial basis. We almost need a pilot program to make certain that we can provide this. We've had our own staffing issues with the Fayetteville Police Department. I certainly don't need to tell the chief that. He's struggled through it. You know, we've had those challenges. So for that reason, you know, I think that when the motion is made, whoever makes it, we definitely need to direct the MOA to go back to the Cumberland County Board of Education and be adjusted accordingly.
Thank you, Councilmember
Thank
Green. Councilmember Davis, first round.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is whoever's going to make the motion. I'm not opposed to two MOUs, one for the TCOs and one for the SROs, and with both of those being one-year agreements. Okay.
All right. And Council, before I go to Councilmember Banks McLaughlin, in that motion, if you could consider to instruct the manager to work on a longer-term agreement that they will bring back to us to review. Because I know as Chief Brayton starts to hire people, they're going to want to know that there's something if they're going to move or leave one position to move over to do something. But I know because of the urgency of the time, that a calendar year is a school year is certainly reasonable to do it just to give the staff time to put a meaningful agreement together. So, Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Mr. Mayor, I have my hand raised.
I'm sorry. The Texans are coming in late, and Hondros does. So I go with Mayor Pro Tem and then Hondros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I do want to say is, after I've heard everybody speak, for the record, I want it to be stated that it was 9-1 that everybody was in favor for the SROs and was in favor of taking care of our kids. Now we're into the details. I'm not going to, belabor everything, but what I will say is I agree with Councilmember Thompson. I agree with Councilmember Green, and I'm agreeing with Councilmember Davis. So I hope when this motion is made that we can move on and take care of our children, but we also have that year that we make sure that we're doing the best thing for our children and our residents and our taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Hondros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo the colleagues' sentiments. I can definitely support a motion to the effect of moving forward, directing staff to move forward with some revisions. I think our staff, our legal needs to make some revisions to protect the city, make sure that the language in this reads such as the services that the chief and the manager are confident and comfortable we can provide. And if that language is in there, I can support this as a short-term one-year agreement. And then to your point, Mr. Mayor, this one-year trial agreement working towards a longer term, the next one could be 5 years once we get it where we need it. But I think we would need, for the longer term agreement, it would be prudent to have a more robust agreement similar to what Wake County has, where there is a lot of specifics delineated what the job description of the SRO is, what the responsibilities are. They law enforcement? Are they security? Are they rule enforcers? We need to, in that more robust agreement, kind of identify, spell out what school staff is responsible for and what our SROs are responsible for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hondros. That's it, Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the MOA with the conditions of a one-year agreement as well as chief recommendation.
All right, and in that motion, does it have some specific directions for them to work with the school board?
With that, to come with the
Yes.
longer term, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I have a point of inquiry on that motion.
Hold on 1 second. Yes, sir. And then I'll come to you, Councilmember.
What are we going to do about the TCOs, which is a separate?
So I think they were going to be two separate.
That's what I wanted to make sure we was
Yeah,
clear.
this was, I'm sorry, SRO.
All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Banks McLaughlin. It was seconded by Councilmember Thompson. Councilmember Benavente, you had a question?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I need the motion repeated in its entirety. Can the motion be repeated?
Sure. I move to approve the SRO MOA with the conditions of a one-year agreement and chief recommendations. And with our,
Mr. Hewitt, you had something?
Yes, sir. The attorney is not here, but I'll lean on Josh. And the direction that would be helpful, I think, from what I've heard, is you direct staff to work with the school board to revise the agreement in front of you to be a one-year term based upon what the staffing levels that the chief is able to provide. And in that 12-month period, we would also seek to revise a longer-term agreement that would contemplate changes similar to what we saw in the Wake County agreement, and this is only for SROs.
That's correct.
correct.
Did I leave anything out of what folks had said?
Councilmember, did you hear the repeated
Is that
motion?
what you?
What city manager said, that's my motion.
Okay, well, I
Thanks
guess.
for summing it all up.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's still unclear. Number one, didn't folks say that they wanted the county and the sheriff to be involved in this as well? If we're going to be revising
That's
it
just too
anyways.
No, that's not any motion.
All right. Well, the second, I agree that you guys don't care about that. The second thing I wanted to get clarity on is you're going to come back to us with those revisions, and so it's not really an approval at all. It's just another revision.
No, the motion on the floor is to authorize the execution of a one-year agreement, MOU, to cover 1 year.
That's my
And-
So that's not what that's not what Doug said.
That is what Doug said.
Revised agreement that would, the timing is hard because you don't have it in front of you, but it needs to reflect, I think, what the chief said he's able to staff and for a 1 year period with an agreement from the school board that they would work toward a longer term agreement that would incorporate the clarity. I think, ma'am, if that's.
So you're revising what they sent us today. This morning they sent something at like 10:30 a.m. You are going to now rewrite certain portions and send it back to them, correct?
No, the motion was to get the revisions as stated and to authorize the manager to execute it and to work on a longer-term agreement to bring it back, the longer-term agreement.
Well, and again, the reason I asked this question is because what if the school board doesn't agree to our revisions?
Then I guess.
We can't.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's a hypothetical, so I guess we'll deal with it if it comes.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this is the last question, y'all. You're saying that the city manager is going to revise something, and then without looking at it again, we're just going to have him sign it, regardless of what he puts in it.
Well, the city manager is authorized by council's direction to sign contracts and documents every day within the parameters of what council has given him. So we've spent an hour and a half laying out the parameters of the agreement that council is willing to accept.
And so you don't have any concerns that anything is going to get missed, and you don't want to look at it again.
So, council member, there's a motion on the floor. This is discussion phase. Do you have anything
And so,
further?
I haven't heard an answer to my question. Doug, maybe you can answer it better than the mayor can. If you
Well, you don't compel me to answer questions to you.
I'm not asking you to compel you. I'm asking
All right.
Doug a question.
Okay.
I said, in fact, I don't want you to answer any more questions for me.
Okay. Listen, we've got a motion and discussion. Yeah, and we have a limitation on the discussion. So
that's right. So, City Manager Hewitt, can you just make it very clear? You're going to make changes to this document, and then we're not going to see if you got all of our points in or not, and you're just going to send it back to the school board. Is that correct?
the motion, again, and I know you may be having a little trouble hearing because you're remote.
No, I'm just waiting for Doug to answer. That's all.
Okay, well, he's repeated the motion. Councilmember Banks made the motion, and we've repeated it several times. But you keep
I
asking.
didn't need the motion repeated anymore. I just wanted to understand what the motion actually means to the city manager who's going to be taking the action. So I'd like not the mayor to answer me, but the city manager to answer
but
me.
unfortunately,
the
council
authority
member,
to do
we're gonna have to unmic you for a moment because we have a motion on the floor, and it's being called for a vote. You've exceeded the time of discussion.
Then I'm asking for
It's the
discussion.
one round.
No. This was me asking. I was allowed to ask a question on the motion, and
Jim.
now I would like discussion as well.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah,
Council,
I have
look-
discussion on the motion.
Look to you for your vote.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I know we made the motion and we made the revisions to that. Can we make sure we have the second on that? Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Thompson.
So those were inquiry. I still have a hand up for motion.
We're voting
for
now,
discussion.
Councilmember. All right, Jen, clear the board.
So I move to overrule the decision of the chair.
All right. Councilmember Hondros, you're voting?
Green.
Councilmember Benavente, you voting?
Well, I have a motion on the floor that hasn't been addressed, and it does
You don't have a motion in the middle of a motion. So are you voting on this? motion?
When the motion is to override the decision of the chair, it absolutely
You
supersedes.
didn't
If
get a
wanna pull
second,
out
sir.
The school of government book.
You didn't get a second. Attorney.
I'll ask for a second. Then is there a second?
He doesn't get the
allow
opportunity
discussion in
to
this
do
matter?
that.
All right,
Motion on the motion.
Councilmember McNair.
You mean Jensen?
Isn't McNair on the line? Okay,
hasn't
Mayor
been
Pro
with
Tem
us.
Jensen. They had told me McNair was on. Mayor Pro Tem?
Green.
She hasn't
All right.
Green.
Oh, McNair's on? Okay. All right. All right.
Green.
Motion carries 9, well, I don't know. He's present for the meeting and he didn't vote to be excused, so it's affirmative.
Mitch,
So
you know it's
so
a
we're
no.
on
Put
to the
me down
next
for no
item.
and start doing the right thing.
Councilmember, you don't have the floor, sir.
The vote is no, and make sure you mark it.
Okay, all right. So voting in opposition, Councilmember Benavente. All right, so Councilmember
Mr.
Banks
Mayor.
McLaughlin or Thompson, was there I'll call
Mr. Mayor.
you for the, yes, sir, Councilmember.
I would like to make a motion that we have a meeting in August. We could talk about it at the work session if you like. Have a meeting where we invite Cumberland County Schools, the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners, and the Cumberland County Sheriff to try to work on some things regarding SROs and TCOs.
Benavente, second.
All right, to work on some things. You mean an additional meeting while they're working on the agreement?
To discuss this, yes, sir. Well, it can help us with the long-term agreement.
Okay, well, yeah, so there was it was a motion by Councilman Mahondro, seconded by Benavente, and there was a lot of questions on can you clarify what do you mean, Councilman Mahondro?
Well, it started with Council Member McNair's email yesterday requesting a meeting with the sheriff to get some understanding and clarity on why this move was made. And then there was robust discussion today about bringing in Cumberland County Schools and Cumberland County Board of Commissioners on how we can work together on this now and in the future. And I think, like I said, it could help us with the longer term, more robust agreement if we choose to go that route.
Councilman Green, you had something?
Councilmember Hondros, would you consider a friendly amendment to extend that a little bit longer out? Maybe rather than August, which seems pretty quick if we don't have the 1 year in place, maybe by September, by October, something that gives a little more time to get the 1 year in place and then.
All right, how much is it?
I would accept a friendly amendment for the August or September work session.
I'm just concerned that they're not going to be ready to have that conversation. I understand your desire, and I actually agree with the fact that we do need to have the discussion with those other entities involved. But I just question that if we try to push it too quickly, we're not going to have the outcome we need.
So to be clear, it's for us to discuss and maybe come up with more of what we want out of that meeting, discuss it in August or September work session, and the meeting can be called if you want to put a time on it.
So clarify your motion, Councilmember. Was your motion to have it as a discussion item in the work session, or were you saying to have the meeting in those months?
No, to have the discussion when we can.
That's different.
Yes.
So September?
We misunderstood.
The meeting can happen within the first 9 weeks of school, so that gives us, I think, right before Christmas break.
You mean the meeting of city council to talk about next steps?
No. On the work session in August or September, I would like to talk about it, and then we could set the meeting where we invite our county partners, Cumberland County Schools, Cumberland County Board of Commissioners, and Cumberland County Sheriff within the first 9 weeks of the school year.
So you're still trying to set the secondary meeting with the other agencies, I think was what Councilmember Green's concern
That's what I'm
was. So if that's what we're trying to clarify, where if you were saying the motion is to get this on a work session for council discussion in September or so, but you're saying to also set a date with the other partners?
Well, I would think the date would be set at that work session.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's covered at the work session, it is, but what's your motion? I guess that's what I want to clarify.
I would like a discussion item in August or September, preferably August, where we, council, discuss a formal meeting with our county partners that can be set time within the first 9 weeks of the school year to discuss a long-term collaboration.
All right, so there was a motion by Councilman Alejandro, seconded by Benavente. In the discussion phase, I like the idea of communication. I am not going to be able to support the motion because it has setting it within 9 weeks. We just put an awful lot on our professional staff to get the first year, school year agreement done in the next 30, 45 days to staff up and have that ramped up. Now, if this is a council discussion in September, I can support what you're asking, but if it's a council discussion contingent upon trying to compel the sheriff, who is now out of it, he has said that he's going to handle the unincorporated areas, and he started moving personnel that way. And so, but if your motion requires the second part of that, I'm not going to be able to support it for that reason.
I would be willing to remove the second part and just say for council to have a discussion in the August or September work session on a future meeting with our county partners.
Okay, all right.
I support that.
All right, so is the motion, any other discussion on that?
Discussion.
You said discussion, Councilmember?
Yes, sir.
All right.
So I think we've already had a discussion about the importance of meeting with commissioners, meeting with the school board, and meeting with, invite the sheriff, like Councilmember McNair had suggested. I don't think there's anything else to say about it. I think that it is prudent that the people who have been doing this for 20, 30 years and paying for this for 20, 30 years explain to the city and the citizens of the city of the Fayetteville and of Cumberland County exactly what is going on here, and for the double taxation for half the services. If you guys are more interested in just moving this along as quickly as possible with as little critical thinking as possible, then really there doesn't need to be another discussion at a future work session. We either just need to do the right thing and bring in all the partners and really have it all put out, or we just continue with this ram it down everyone's throat method of making this happen.
So there was an amendment to that motion that asked for us to be a city council discussion. Did you also agree to amend it with the second, or based on your comments, are you withdrawing your second?
So I'm going to withdraw my second because, again, we've already had the discussion about whether or not it's worthy. This is the time to go ahead and vote on it.
Thank you, Councilmember. And there's been a second that's replaced his second by Councilmember Davis has agreed to second the motion, the amended motion that Councilmember Hondros made. We've had discussion. Council, I'll look to you for your votes. This is for the September work session, correct?
Well, why does it need to be September if it's just amongst ourselves? Make it August.
Well, he said August or September. Was there any clarity?
August or September's fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Councilmember, somebody said Green. Was that Mayor Pro Tem?
That was me.
Oh, Councilmember McNair, you on there?
Yeah, I was talking. You said signal.
I called your name. What are you talking about? All right. So Green, Councilmember McNair, Councilmember Benavente?
Red.
All right. Councilmember Hondros?
Green.
All right. Councilmember is, I think that's everybody, right?
Mayor
Pro Tem?
Mayor Pro Tem's here.
You green or red?
Yeah, green.
Okay.
Green.
All right. All right. Motion carries 9-1. Those voting in opposition, Councilmember Benavente. All right. Now the TCOs, I think there was going to be a separate discussion about that. Council, as we look at that, they proposed, from what I understood, some of the logic from Mr. Tolan was just like you all know that you can't pay recurring positions with one-time money. I think they had some fund balance that they were able to use to initially pay it 100% and to phase it out. But I think a portion of that is that they're trying to identify a recurring source before any 5-year agreement was made. So maybe for your consideration, it would mirror what you just did on the SROs, is maybe there is this school year or year calendaring of certain things, which they've already agreed to represent 100%. But because you're now separating it into a separate agreement, you may want to be some direction to the manager to see what that separate agreement looks like for just the TCOs. Unless, Doug, you have any input on how you address that?
Yes, sir. If you take a look at the agreement that the blue line copy that came out, they set out, and Josh is here too, and kick me again, as Lachelle would. I'm looking at the first page of this, of the blue line that you have. It would largely just be asking for an agreement that would have the premises that the second blue was, whereas pursuant to the terms of the other agreement, the city will provide TCOs for designated schools in the city, according, and be paid for according to Schedule 2, which is at the back of your book, of the packet that shows the number of TCOs recommended per school. We would, of course, write in that as well that that would be based upon our availability to provide that service. Hiring 66 people by August 25th is not likely going to happen, and if we have to use additional staff members to try to affect that, which we probably will, that may not be something that would be reimbursed under this agreement, but that would be the principle. To basically say we authorize the manager to execute a memorandum of agreement with the school system for 1 year for TCOs with the school system to pay 100% of the cost according to the base agreement here, subject to be worked out and revised. But that, I think, would give me all I need, Josh. Jeff, if you're on, or Kelly and others, is that clear? And your motion as well, another motion would be helpful, would be, with all of it, after this is, you also authorize the manager to do any and all things necessary to effectuate what you've told me. That means if I need to move a little money hither or yon before I get back with you to set up a sub-ledger or something like that. But if not, we'll just absorb it until we get back with y'all in August.
It's a lot of rope.
It's a lot of rope, but I tell you what, without a rope, it falls through the floor. And so we...
too much you get tripped up. But you got some money to move with this, so for copy paper.
Okay, you give me me the authority to move money. That's all I need.
Here's the copy.
That's all. Thank you, accountants. Thank you. Good.
Mayor, I move that we give the city manager the authority to provide transit control officers at designated schools within his city, and to form a memorandum of understanding agreement to provide these TSOs, and that the city manager will also be able to, I don't want to say move money around, but give him the,
Shouldn't have the money to move. They're paying 100%. But
well, then,
to
I would
execute the document, the one-year
okay,
document.
to execute the document on things what I've just stated, and I'll let that be the
Right.
end of the motion.
Yes, sir. And it also including that the funding will come from
For,
the school
for a
system.
1-year
Yes, sir.
Plan.
Yes, sir.
All right, so there's a motion by Councilwoman Harris stated to give the city manager authorization to execute a 1-year agreement with the TCOs for the 100% reimbursement schedule as stated in the base agreement that was before us, and to do those things necessary to carry that function out. And there was a second by Councilmember Davis? Sure, what's your member?
A long-term plan, maybe 5 years for us to look down the road on how this can be funded. So once we have the SRO long plan, we will also have the TCO long plan.
All right, so Councilmember Harris, you agree
Well,
with?
we can. I was thinking that we were going to do a separate motion for that, but no problem. If that works, then yes, sir, I'll accept.
All right, this is an amended motion by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Thompson. Councilmember Thompson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, any discussion on the motion?
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So this motion for the TCOs, is it giving our staff, the manager and attorney, to revise the language to state that as much as we can provide? In other words, that Schedule 2, there was a lot of staff TCO positions there. So I just want to make sure, so that I can support this, that the language would be such that only as much so, like we're only responsible for what we can provide.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
And keep in mind, I don't think any of these were fully staffed positions, even when the county and the sheriff had it. I think there were 47 of the 79 locations that had SROs, and some smaller percentage for TCOs. But yes, that's the assumption. But I think Mayor Pro Tem Jensen and Ben Benavente. It's a discussion phase of it. Mayor Pro Tem, can you hear us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I put my hand down. My question was answered. Thank you.
All right, Councilman Benavente?
Can the motion be repeated? Because it sounded like y'all said you want to revise something, but there's no MOU that exists just for TCOs yet, is there?
It was to revise the proposal that is here today with the base language that talked about the 100% reimbursement, but they were authorizing the manager to execute it for a 1-year contract.
So we're saying that I thought the school board sent us an MOU that had everything included, TCO and SRO, but then y'all wanted to separate it. So there's not really a separate TCO agreement yet, is there?
There was
City
two
Manager
separate
Hewitt?
motions. I don't know if there are two separate documents yet, but there's two separate motions that instruct what to do in both.
But our motions
so now
made
on
them
the
two
topic of-
separate documents.
Well,
Correct?
and so that's what I'm saying. We can't revise something that doesn't exist yet. So that's why I'm trying to get clarity from the city manager specifically. Hopefully, you'll talk to me. Are we going to be
Revising this
drafting?
piece of paper.
Yes. Yes, sir, you have it. We are taking the MOA that's in front of you, and we're splitting it into two documents. One that speaks to SROs and what we're capable of funding or staffing in 12 months. And the chief has talked about 9 positions that would be roving, but primarily at the high schools. And then the SROs, then TCOs funded by the school system for the schools within the district, again, to our ability to staff those, and that would be 100% reimbursed by the school system. So we're looking to split this one agreement into two, and y'all have given me the authority to work with the city attorney to draft those and put them back to the school system. And if there's any substantive difference at all, it will come back to the council and we'd ask you for an emergency meeting.
So what? Okay, that's good to hear. Now, when it comes to the TCO agreement that you're going to be drafting separately, I'm trying, and I guess I'm in discussion phase now. I thought that you guys wanted to separate the two because the sense of urgency for TCOs was different, and you wanted to have conversations with the county as far as the fact that they're getting to squirrel away the money that they used to spend on this, and so why is there a need to sign this document with that same sense of urgency if we already discussed exactly why TCOs is different? If TCO's situation wasn't different, then y'all would not have separated them. You separated them specifically because the TCO situation has a lot more of a conversation point with the county commissioners. So earlier, y'all said you wanted to have a discussion about having a discussion with the county commissioners. This was the reason you guys wanted to consider that in the first place, the TCO stuff. So how can we agree to something that y'all specifically said you didn't want to include in the one document because you wanted to talk to county commissioners, but now you're telling them to sign it anyways? The point of splitting them is being frustrated or made moot if you just sign it today.
Councilman, you're repeating your point. We're over the 2 minutes, so we're calling for the vote. All right, Councilman,
Y'all really know what you're doing.
for your vote. Councilmember Hondros,
Green.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Green.
Councilmember McNair,
Green.
Councilmember Benavente.
Red.
Thank you. All right, motion carries 9-1. Those voting opposed, Councilmember Benavente. Council, motion to adjourn. Oh, yes, sir.
Mayor, I just wanted to ask the chief, where are we, if we're anywhere, with incoming officers, an academy, or anything along that line? Are we anywhere?
Yes, we have 25 that are fixing to start the academy. We're getting ready to graduate, what is the number, 15, 16 from our existing academy.
How many you say get ready?
16 are getting ready to graduate within the next month and a half. I have 25 seated, ready to go to the academy, and we're already gathering a pool of lateral hires for August 1st.
Did you see that the budget, apparently we're seeing that the budget is helping?
Yes, sir. And again, we have those. We're in talks with those laterals to get those guys hired on August 1st as soon as that takes effect. Excuse me. And again, these are just negotiations. We don't have any agreements with any of those because we're waiting on that August 1st date to hit. But I know there's at least 5 that I'm aware that we're talking with, and are waiting to submit their employment applications.
So, Chief, quick question, and Council, good job on this. This was tough work. You very practical and poised in doing it, so I appreciate you getting that done. Chief, these officers that will serve as SROs are fully sworn law enforcement officers like anything else, right? They've already been to BLE. They got the same credentials and training as any other of your other officers, correct?
Correct. There's no difference. The only difference is the extra training they get to get their SRO certification.
So at the very least, this helps your department staff up, because if you're bringing on new people for one function, but as they said, the other 140 plus days that they're not working the schools, you have available officers trained and ready, right?
Correct. They're capable of performing all law enforcement functions.
All right. Thank you. All right. Council, motion to adjourn. All right. Have a good day.